It's top of the hour and you're just in time for the top bulletin in town. Our main focus tonight. Night on NTV. A fresh flare-up of violence in Njoro.
Mahindi kunia 10, marakwe na manguo, kila kitu ya kulalia yote kondani.
The tales from the night of death and terror rekindled by the looming Mau Forest evictions.
Also tonight, a bearable burden or crippling debt.
We are very far away from that threshold.
We are concerned for two reasons. One, it's grown too fast.
Government says huge appetite for loans is really nothing to worry about.
Plus, the Kenya police gets a makeover, but that's not all that's new.
The following positions where they existed are abolished.
We have the details of the reforms in the police service announced by President Uhuru Kenyatta.
And also tonight,
Nikawaambia nendeni mnipatie ng'ombe. Kaniambia sisi ulipa mtu ng'ombe 14.
the steep price of a traditional justice system for the family of a man murdered in a dispute over 50 shillings.
NTV Tonight with Mark Masai and Gladys Gachanja.
Gladys and I, as well as our sign language interpreter, Flora Atieno, glad you could make time for us. A top story.
3 people have died and more than 10 others are injured in Neswit, Nakuru County. The latest outburst of clashes is presumed to have been sparked by the ongoing operation to rid the Mau of human invasion.
Police have made 3 arrests so far and are still searching for other suspects, among them politicians alleged to have incited the violence. Bridget Singana with more.
At Musegekwa village bordering the Mau Forest in Nakuru County, light plumes of smoke tell the tales of terror visited upon the residents on Wednesday night. This is Rose Chepkurui's homestead. She fled with her children to the forest after an afternoon of escalated tension. She watched helplessly even as the food she had come to get for her young ones was no more.
Nilikuwa na kabati kubwa, hii seti kubwa, mahindi kunia 10 na marakwe kunia 3 na manguo, kila kitu ya kulalia yote kondani. Mamitungi na majenereta, vitu ya vyombo ya kanisa yote.
Along the roads, women, children and donkeys ferried what could be salvaged from their homes as they made their way into public schools where they shall be seeking refuge at least until the chaos die out. Their stories on how the sporadic conflict began vary.
Hakuna mtu ile na ate fulani huyu ndi tumekosana na yeye kwa kosa fulani. Yaani kama ni deni ama ni nini. Watu wanaingiliana tu na kufiakana.
Najua hapa ilikuwa imechorwa cut line ya forest, alafu kuna mashamba ya numberless. Sasa hii mashamba ya numberless watu wakatoka. Sasa hiyo walipotoka ikaonekana kama ni njama labda ya watu fulani kutolewa, alafu wengine waingizwe huko.
So I don't know what is happening. Maybe the government should come and then maybe try to bring the situation down, to bring the two communities together, and then I think itakuwa poa.
The afternoon was spent in a cat and mouse chase between the police and the aggressors. The maze-filled terrain only making the officers' work difficult. Security officials maintaining that the fracas was due to incitement.
Some people went beyond the allocated areas. And these are the people when we send the chiefs to inform them, and we inform them. Some politicians came to interpret, to give different interpretation of what we had told the members of the public.
8 schools have been shut down in the wake of the violence, and the area remains under intense security surveillance. Well, there has been speculation that the cause of the conflict here in Musegekwa is because of the ongoing evictions in the other side of the Mau Forest in Narok County. Here in Nakuru, the families will have to spend another night in the cold, and they do hope that the leaders here and the security apparatus will find a solution to this matter as soon as possible. Bridget, Ghana, NTV, Nakuru County.
Meanwhile, all the 10 people injured in the violence in Neswit, Nakuru County, had arrowheads lodged in their bodies.
The 10 are admitted at Nakuru Level 5 Hospital, and NTV's Sharon Baranga has more.
Peter Rope has been admitted at Nakuru Level 5 Hospital with an arrow lodged in his head. Unlike other patients, he cannot sleep due to the extent of his injuries. Rope operates a boda boda, and he was injured as he ferried a passenger from Keringet to Sigaon. He believes if he had a helmet on, then he would not be suffering. Rope and 10 others were injured at Sigaon village in Esut, Njoro sub-county in Mau. Nicholas Kepkemoi recollects yesterday's incident that almost cost him his life.
Watu walikuja wakatuvamia. Tulikuwa kwa nyumba. Tukakuja mpaka Egerton University. Mpaka hapa Njoro. Mpaka tukakuja tulikuwa na mshala chini ya mguu hapa. Nikang'oa.
One was taken to theater and eventually ended up in the ICU. Other 4 were removed, the arrows, they are stable.
The violence erupted between 2 communities in Sigotik and Tuitagoi yesterday in the evening. 3 people lost their lives. Witnesses say the violence was triggered by the occupation of land on the edges of Mau Forest by settlers. The government aims to evict more than 40,000 of those living in the forest in a bid to reclaim the water tower. Area leaders from Njoro say the attacks have taken a similar pattern to those witnessed in Narok South, where at least 4 people were killed and 60 houses torched. Sharon Baranga, NTV.
To security of another kind, President Uhuru Kenyatta has enacted major reforms within the National Police Service in what he says is aimed at making the police a service that is respected rather than a force that is feared.
The head of state said the reforms, which include unifying the Kenya Police and the Kenya Administration Police formations into one unit, are meant to make the force more efficient. NTV's Zainab Ismail tells us more.
The highlight of today's historic transformation of the country's police service, which apparently caught the attention of most Kenyans, is the introduction of the new blue uniform for police officers. But that was just part of the changes President Uhuru Kenyatta has introduced in the service at the Kenya School of Government in Nairobi. According to the new reforms, administration police officers will be absorbed into the Kenya Police to form one unit. Now, the few that will remain will have their duties redefined that will mainly revolve around providing security to government buildings and facilities such as the SGR and other critical facilities.
Wale ambao walikuwa wanafikiria ya kwamba AP hawezi kukufunga, kutoka leo mtaanza kuona AP anakufunga na anakupeleka kotini.
According to the head of state, the structural reforms were necessary to eliminate overlap and duplication of functions within the police service in conformity with the National Police Act 2011. In the new command structure, the Inspector General of Police will head the new General Duty Police with the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. Deputy IG from the Kenya Police Service and Deputy IG Administration Police Service coming right under. The new framework will assign specific and distinct functions to the Deputy Inspector Generals and Directorate of Criminal Investigations. Deputy IG from the Kenya Police Service will now focus on public safety and security, while Deputy IG from the Administration Police will focus on protective and border security as well as cattle rustling and banditry. The Directorate of Criminal Investigations will solely focus on criminal investigations. There will now be only one regional police commander, one county police commander, one sub-county police commander, and one officer commanding police station or ward commander who will be in charge of its posts and patrol bases. At the same time, 12 positions have been rendered obsolete in the new structure. These are Administration Police Service Regional Commander, Kenya Police Regional Service Commander, Director of Criminal Investigations Regional Commander, County Coordinating Commander, Kenya Police Service County Commander, Administration Police Service County Commander, Director of Criminal Investigations County Commander, Administration Police Service Sub-County Commander, Director of Criminal Investigations Sub-County Commander, the Kenya Police Service Officer Commanding Police Division OCPD, Director Administration Police Commander DAPC, and Administration Police Service Ward Commander. At the same time, President Uhuru Kenyatta has also abolished the policy of mandatory and free housing for junior officers.
To effect the new policy, I also today direct the National Treasury to initiate the termination of all leases with landlords of police estates within 90 days of the effective date of the new allowances. Officers in these estates will be required to enter into private tenancies with property owners.
Zainab Ismail, NTV.
Well, besides what many people are talking about in terms of the reactions to the uniform and the new look, well, the Kenya Police and Administration Police have now been merged into a single unit, as has been mentioned there, that will be given clearly defined duties. This is one of the reforms that come into effect today after the President launched the new police service.
The joining of the two units is not only informed by the need to streamline the operations of the service, but also to help better handle the Administration Police that has often been accused of overreaching its mandate.
NTV's Brenda Wanga with a historical perspective of the new changes.
The change in the attire for the Kenya Police Service, now General Duty Service, is the most visible sign of the changes in the security outfit. It is also the culmination of the execution of an idea that was planted about a decade ago and one whose implementation began in earnest about 5 years ago. The reorganization, perhaps the tail end of a process that is aimed at not just revamping the police service, formerly known as the police force, but also increasing efficacy and rehabilitating the public perception of the police service.
We understand the Constitution and the law. What we have done is reorganize the command and control in order to ensure effective service delivery to all Kenyans.
Aside from the attire, the police, which has in the past been under two broad commands of the National Police and the Administration Police, will now be under one central command. This technically bringing the almost century-long existence of the Administration Police to a close.
Posts and outposts formerly under the Administration Police Service shall fall under the General Duty Police. Wale ambao walikuwa wanafikiria ya kwamba AP hawezi kukufunga, kutoka leo mtaanza kuona AP anakufunga na anakupeleka kotini.
The fate of the Administration Police has been a subject of debate for a while now. The wing of the police, which like the now former regular police, traces its roots to the pre-colonial era. Then it was used largely to enforce the colonial administration's taxation, labor and trade policies, gaining notoriety as a force used to do the white man's dirty work. It is a reputation that the service seemed to enjoy holding on to, and one that was used by post-colonial governments to maintain a stranglehold onto the general population, especially during the one-party rule in Kenya. The indictment in the post-election violence of 2008, perhaps the last straw that saw an increase in the clamor for reforms in this unit. On the other hand, the regular police have also had their fair share of disrepute. They have been cited time and again for involvement in graft, landing successively on the list of the most corrupt and least trusted institutions in the country. But they too have had their list of factors that limit their performance. Top on that list, the issue of welfare and particularly housing.
We want to move from a force to a service that is respected and that lives in dignity in and amongst her people. Hiyo ndio tunatafuta.
The reforms now usher in a new phase in the country's policing landscape, one that many hope will transform the unit into what it ought to be, a service for the people, a service that will cater to the security demands of the people without falling into the trap of political manipulation. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
Away from security martyrs, and religious leaders in the country are calling on President Uhuru Kenyatta to halt any more international engagements whose main agenda is to seek funding for development projects in the country, citing this as the reason the cost of living is high and life is becoming unbearable for many Kenyans.
The leaders who met under the National Dialogue Conference want the government to initiate an inclusive dialogue to effectively address the political and governance crisis in the country.
The last month has been one of the busiest in the president's calendar that saw him fly to 2 continents and engage with Kenya's former colonial master, all in a bid to seek funding for developing the nation.
Based on the big 4, housing, healthcare, food security, manufacturing, all leads itself open to opportunities for foreign companies to invest.
The clergy is questioning the nobility of these foreign engagements and is calling them out to be the reason for the suffering of many Kenyans.
Kenyans will recognize that we are not totally convinced that the monies borrowed to support development have all aided in development initiatives and activities and projects, because we also know about the endemic corruption that bedevils this country.
The clergy are now proposing that an independent audit of the national debt be undertaken immediately to establish who is owed, how much they are owed, the terms of the debts, purpose for which the money was borrowed, and if the debts were actually invested for the purpose that they were intended.
By the government checking corruption and stopping it in its tracks, better accountability of national resources and the taxes that KRA collects ought to be able to enable us to fund our country, its operations and its development without over-relying on borrowing.
Parliament is expected to initiate this within the next 6 months, or else the people will form a People's National Debt Audit Task Force to undertake the assignment.
We are all concerned with the heavy borrowing, that the public debt, when it goes so high in this country, we will not be having any money spared in our budget for development. Any single money raised will be servicing the loans and the high cost of interest of those loans.
Anglican Archbishop Jackson Olesepit believes that the country has been losing billions of shillings each year to corruption, some of which was borrowed. He says the country currently owes the World Bank and China a total of 5.1 trillion shillings.
We continue to increase that public debt, then Kenyans, not only this generation, but generations to come, are going to pay it hard.
In order to bring fairness in government business, the National Assembly is also being asked to pass a Conflict of Interest Act, which will stop public officers, state officers and political leaders and their families or their representatives from doing business with the government at both the county and national government level.
On a spot, the government has today defended its appetite for loans, saying the country's 5 trillion shilling debt is still sustainable, believe it or not, despite the fact that the amount is more than half of the GDP.
Treasury's Principal Secretary Dr. Kamau Thuge dismissed claims that Kenya is over-borrowing, saying that while the country's debt has been growing, the figures are still below the internationally set threshold.
His sentiments contradict those of economists who have warned that the borrowing may become unsustainable. NTV's Silas Apollo reports.
I don't have a PowerPoint presentation.
Speaking in Nairobi on Thursday morning, Treasury Principal Secretary Kamau Thuge sought to assure Kenyans that the country's finances were in stable hands. He says that contrary to fears that the government's borrowing has hit the red zone, there is nothing to worry about and that the figures are not as worrisome as some have argued. In fact, he says our debt level is still way below the standards set by international lenders such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, IMF.
The current situation is our net present value of debt is 49. So we are comparing a situation of 49 versus 74. So even on that basis, that there's a threshold that has been agreed internationally that signals that you are moving to an unsustainable position. Using that threshold, we are very far away from that threshold.
Our debt to total debt to the gross domestic product ratio was about 44-45% when President Uhuru Kenyatta was elected, actually much lower than that, about 43. It's now going towards 60, and I think it'll be a while before it plateaus. So that's why people are concerned. We are concerned for two reasons. One, it's grown too fast, but also it's a big share of an even bigger amount.
Kenya's GDP, which is the country's annual total production, currently stands at about 9.7 trillion shillings, a figure which the Treasury says can allow the country to borrow more.
So even comparing our growth in debt compared to other countries, we have actually built that debt relatively at a much lower pace than other countries.
Thuge was speaking during the launch of the media-term budget-making process for 2019 to 2022.
The argument by the Treasury therefore means that the government will and can still borrow more to fund its expenditure. Opposition analysts argue could be tricky and could plunge the country into more debt.
In recent years, the growth of Kenya's economy has been largely as a result of government spending against the preferred increase in the contribution of the private sector. The government has been pumping money into many infrastructure projects. The danger with that being that Kenya might need to pay for our debts before the investments post sufficient returns.
We were promised things in a way. We also accepted too many things, trying to build stadiums, all manner of things, the standard gauge railway and all these goodies, shiny things that have not generated any growth, in addition to the money that's been stolen.
The government remains adamant that its heavy borrowing is sustainable, even as it piles more pressure on the youth who will bear the brunt of repayment. It is a debate that refuses to die down, and one which economists seem to have agreed to disagree. Silas Apollo, NTV.
President Uhuru Kenyatta now has 14 days within which he could make a decision on the 2018 finance bill after it was handed over to him this evening.
This comes against a backdrop of pressure from Kenyans and politicians who have been urging him to sign the bill and extend the caveat on the coming into effect of the 16% VAT that had been postponed twice before.
Early in the day, National Assembly Minority Leader John Mbadi read malice in the delay on submitting the bill to President Kenyatta 14 days after the House had dispensed with the matter. NTV's Kennedy Murithi with more.
The Constitution of Kenya, Chapter 115, under presidential assent and referral, the 14 days within which the president is supposed to act on a bill from Parliament starts when he receives it, as he has done this evening. There has been uncertainty about whether the president had received the bill 14 days after it had been passed by the National Assembly, as many publicly beseeched him to sign it, in effect postponing the effecting of the 16% VAT.
Serious economists, serious finance experts don't even need 2 days to think of how to plug the possible budget hole that is going to result as a result of failing to tax or to apply VAT on fuel products. Why? The amount that we expect to receive is, in my view, about just 40 billion. 40 billion is not something that would require really an engagement of serious minds for more than 3 days.
The cost of living continues to soar due to the coming into effect of the 16% VAT on petroleum products at the beginning of the month. For the last year, Brent crude oil prices have been rising, offering no solace to the local market, thus the rise and rise of prices at the pump. The passage of the 2018 finance bill that catered for an extension of the coming into effect of the 16% VAT for another 2 years came as a relief for Kenyans.
The people of Kenya are waiting for their president to see if he's also thinking the way they're thinking. And if the president is going to think differently from the way Kenyans are thinking, which is to assent to this bill, then the people of Kenya will again look up to their MPs to see if they're thinking the way they're thinking. And if the MPs now abandon them, that will be very unfortunate. Now the only recourse that people of Kenya have will be to go to the street.
Treasury CS Henry Rotich says there are consultations going on behind closed doors in an effort to find a solution to this impasse.
We are looking at it, reviewing, consulting, and let me not preempt what we are currently discussing. And as I said, within a very short time you will get indications on where we are going on it. But just to tell you, it will be positive. It will be positive.
There is general suspicion that pressure from the International Monetary Fund has contributed to the president's silence as tough conditions are set.
IMF does not and will never mean well for developing countries. At the moment, I'm very convinced that IMF is trying to play and fight the battle of Western world countries.
Kennedy Murithi, NTV.
And because of that story, this is when you'll hear most Tunomba Serikali, and understandably so, coming a lot from Kenyans. We're Kenyans as well. I could tell you we could use a break on that side of life. Well, Tunomba kupumzika kidogo. We'll be back shortly with more on NTV Tonight.
Thank you for staying with us. Former Chase Bank chairman Mohammed Zafrullah Khan has been detained at Kileleshwa police station after being arraigned in court today to face charges of illegally obtaining 1.15 billion shillings from the bank. Between 23 January 2015 and March 2016, Mohammed Zafrullah Khan, together with other 3 co-accused persons, is accused of having removed the money from a Chase Bank account and facilitated its transfer to Paramount Universal Bank. Zafrullah denied the criminal charges. Now, Senior Resident Magistrate Helen Onkwane ordered Zafrullah to be detained at Kileleshwa police station until Monday next week, when she will make a ruling over his bond terms. The magistrate issued a warrant of arrest against 4 other accused persons who failed to appear in court. A family is regretting having accepted a deal of 14 cows to drop their interest in a murder case in Makindu, Makueni County. The alleged murder of their son and brother, Stephen Silla, may go unpunished owing to an age-old practice in the Kamba community called Mambo. Now, NTV's Charity Mwangi has details.
It is the law of the village in Ukambani that is known by all but spoken of in hushed tones. Mambo had, prior to the death of Stephen Silla, been kept secret. His death was as a result of a conflict over his delayed service in repairing a bag.
Niliambiwa tu aliuawa. Mimi niliambiwa aliuawa.
Msioka Kituku, the alleged killer, didn't have the patience as he demanded immediate service or a refund of the money he had paid for the repairs. It took long for the eyewitnesses to take Silla to hospital, which partly contributed to his death, his father's grief causing him to take justice from the clan system.
Vile mimi nilikuwa na jua huyu mzee. Wakati mimi nilisikia hii kifo, sasa nikawaambia hivi, nendeni mnipatie ng'ombe. Sile ulipo mtu akiuawa. Kaniambia ndio. Kaniambia sisi ulipo mtu ng'ombe 14.
According to the agreement, Kituku was to deliver half of the settlement by August 31st. But so far, the late Silla's family has just received 1 cow and 10,000 shillings.
Ng'ombe moja ni 5,000 na wakasema hawezi pata sote pamoja hivi karibuni. Walileta ng'ombe moja na hiyo ng'ombe moja wanielezea ati watasijui ni siku gani ingine watakwenda kuleta.
They are reading a lack of commitment to the whole arrangement as the delay and the constitution of the Mambo was quite suspect.
Kwa naongojea ng'ombe iwe 14. Sababu ile mambo mimi nayafikiria kwa mauaji ya mwanangu ni mambo mabaya sana na ni mambo mbaya.
Silla's father, blind and in his old age, recounts the investment he put into his son with the hope that he would live long enough to take care of him and the entire family.
Huyu alikuwa anashona viatu, unaiona kama inashona na mashini na ni mkono. Sababu ya kufanya hiyo course mwaka 2. Hiyo ng'ombe 2 mimi nilipeleka Kibwezi, nikaleta hii mtoto kwa course. Mimi nitakuja kulipwa na nani?
But the payment of the 14 cows for a life lost is an arrangement that the police say they do not recognize and only learned of through the papers.
Kuna njia badala ya kusuluhisha mambo, lakini kwa kesi kama hii mimi siwezi kuingilia, maana sisi tunafuata ile taratibu ambao tumepewa na sheria, lakini yale mengine sisi siwezi ingilia kama wale wanafanya hayo.
With just the 2 of them living here, the emptiness in this homestead is one that is difficult to ignore. It is a delicate balance for Silla's brother to meet the financial needs of this family and also take care of his aging father. Charity Mwangi, NTV.
From Makueni County to Kisii County, and detectives have been dispatched to Kisii to investigate the death of 3 people, among them a police officer, a conductor and a boda rider in Gachanja. Now, police officers and residents clashed during protest over the killing of a conductor who died after he was allegedly hit by a police officer in the chest and stomach on Wednesday. Kevin Mutai reports.
Their gloomy faces, perhaps signaling the pain and agony this family is going through. Their eyes are set on police officers who they claim killed their son Paul Omare. Witnesses say Omare was driving a bus when he was ordered to stop by police officers, but opted to speed off, prompting a chase. When he was arrested, one of the officers allegedly hit him in the chest and stomach using a gun butt. He succumbed to the injuries en route to hospital.
Tunaendelea kusisitiza ya kwamba wale maaskari ambao walitekeleza kile kitendo waondolewe katika tauni yetu hii.
Wangepitia kwa chairman ya hiyo sako ya hiyo gari itabutwe iletwe hapa kuliko kukimbiza mpaka mwishowe wamepoteza maisha ya kijana ambao ni innocent, ni kijana ambao ni mtulivu. Kazi ya polisi si kukimbizana.
Omare's death sparked off violent protests which led to the death of an officer residents claim killed their kin. The protesters engaged police in running battles for several hours within the town when officers opted to shoot in the air to disperse the angry crowd. During the melee, a boda operator was killed and a primary school pupil injured by stray bullets.
Our teams are on the ground doing investigation, because all these deaths must be thoroughly investigated so that we can come to a conclusion.
Detectives have been dispatched to the area to probe the incident. Kevin Mutai, NTV.
Mark Masai will be bringing the business news to you right after this.
Welcome aboard. NTV Business takes off with Kenya Airways, which has been cleared to begin direct flights to the U.S. later in October this year, after receiving the last point of departure confirmation, affirming that the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport meets the American Transport Security Administration security standards. Victor Kiprop attended the handover of the letter and filed the following report.
After more than 3 years of pursuing direct flights to the United States, Kenya Airways passengers will finally get to enjoy shorter and cheaper trips between Nairobi and Washington, D.C. after Kenya Airways passed the last test in the run-up to the inaugural October flights.
Quite a lot of work to be done at the airport by us and just filling in the last papers, but this is just like a finishing, the end last step of this process. We started the sale of the tickets January the 11th this year.
Speaking during the event, outgoing U.S. Ambassador to Kenya Bob Godek, who handed over the letter, said the United States government would advance 150 million shillings to the Kenya Airports Authority, which will go into, among other things, improving security systems at the JKIA ahead of the much-awaited flights.
The truth of it is, when people travel, when they move back and forth between two places, they don't just bring themselves. They bring ideas, they bring creativity, they bring goods, they bring services, they bring a lot of different stuff that really is going to boost the connection between our countries. It's going to help increase trade, investment, cultural exchanges.
KQ will deploy true Dreamliners on the daily transatlantic flights, which will cut the time between the two cities by about 7 hours to 15 hours, with each trip carrying a maximum of 234 passengers, 204 of them in economy class and the rest in business class.
If you look at manufacturing, we have a lot of apparels, industries here, which are exporting goods to the US through the AGOA program. Those industries will certainly have a big benefit, because with cargo flying to the US directly, there'll be a big benefit. Housing, we have housing companies, pension funds wanting to come here from the US, and already we are discussing with them.
The United States remain a key source of tourists to Kenya, with the data from the Kenya Tourism Board indicating that the number of U.S. tourists visiting Kenya between January and October 2017 stood at more than 95,700, about 16% up from the 82,300 recorded in the same period in 2016. Victor Kiprop, NTV Business.
Just how committed is the government towards seeing to it that Mumias Sugar Company gets back on its feet and plays a role it should to promote the economy of Western Kenya? That is a question one asks, especially when you consider the myriad challenges that once vibrant company faces. Here's Alex Mwangi with more details.
All we want to appeal to the farmers, our farmers, that we have a factory which is ready to crush cane. I know the cane is there, the farmers are just waiting, the goodwill of farmers. There are really farmers who have kept cane specifically for Mumias.
It's an appeal to farmers that, though loud and clear, is difficult for many of them to hearken to. Consider this treatment that they have received from the company, even as it seeks a 3 billion shilling bailout from the government.
The first bailout that comes, the priority should be the farmers who gave us cane dating way back 2014, 2015 have not been paid. We are not servicing our loans we have taken from banks, from SACCOs, from everywhere.
It will seem like a pattern has been formed where government bailouts for public sugar milling companies always end up short of providing the help needed to put them back on track or near full production.
Against the total debt of about over 20 billion, you realize this 3 billion coming will be just as a drop in the ocean.
The debt situation has had an adverse impact on the company's workforce.
They have not been earning for the last 12 months.
The miller owes farmers in excess of 700 million shillings and is hoping the production of ethanol will help finance its recovery strategy.
Right now, even our nucleus has no cane, but we have managed to plant about 500 hectares of good seed cane So those farmers who are preparing land now, we have seed cane for them. The total target hectares we are looking at state is over 60,000 hectares. So you can see we are just about 10,000 hectares. So we still have a long way to go.
The company started production of ethanol earlier this week and hopes to continue doing so for the next 4 days. It has slightly over 300 tons of molasses, a raw material in the production of ethanol. Alex Mwangi, NTV.
Since May this year, the government has seized contraband goods worth 7.5 billion shillings from the port of Kenya, pointing to the huge extent of illegal trade that has been going on at East Africa's foremost trade gateway. While speaking during the pre-export verification of conformity program in Mombasa, the CEO for Anti-Counterfeit Agency, Elema Halake, said the goods ranging from foodstuffs to electronics were nabbed by the multi-agency team before making entry into the country. At the same event, the Shippers Council of East Africa's Chief Executive Gilbert Langat called for cooperation between government agencies and those in the private sector to reduce losses by importers and promote efficiency.
The multi-agency intervention is working, and as government, this seems to be the direction we are going to go.
Any delay is a cost. Remember, there are regulations in terms of the tariff. So you are given 4 days free period. So if there's a delay, any extra day, you are paying storage. One to the port authority.
Apple has unveiled its biggest and priciest iPhone ever, and that is called the Max right now, which has a larger display than the usual plus-size phones. The trillion-dollar company is betting big on the iPhone series, with the phones having higher specifications than previous models. One of the changes the company has brought about is to do away with fingerprint ID in favor of facial ID. Globally, iPhone faces stiff competition from South Korea's Samsung and Chinese Huawei, but has stuck to its strategy of targeting a niche clientele. That's it for NTV Business.
Welcome back. While leaders and royalty paid their respects to one of Africa's most famous diplomats, Kofi Annan, at his funeral in his home country of Ghana, there was also a moving tribute by his wife, Swedish lawyer and artist Nane Maria Annan. She described how her husband was always excited to return home and thanked Ghana for giving the world such an extraordinary man. She said her husband had an irresistible aura of radiant warmth. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, on his part, said Annan was an exceptional leader who saw the UN as a force for good. Annan's last journey was a climax of 3 days of mourning, which saw thousands of Ghanaians file past his coffin as it lay in state in the capital, Accra. Now, Annan was UN Secretary General from 1997 to 2006.
To the rest of the big world, he was Kofi Annan, global statesman par excellence. To me, he was simply Daddy, my hero.
Well, breaking news coming through is that President Uhuru Kenyatta has rejected the finance bill that was tabled on his, or rather in his office this evening. He has sent it back to Parliament, and from what we are informed, this means that MPs will have to marshal the 2/3 of their whole membership to overturn that president's directive. Again, breaking news is that President Uhuru Kenyatta has sent back to Parliament that finance bill, and that means that the MPs will have to marshal 2/3 of their whole membership to overturn the president's directive, and the president must have returned it with a memorandum, something that we shall be following up for you tomorrow. Well, time for another short break on NTV. Tonight we'll be back with a sporting action. Today met U.S. Catholic bishops to discuss claims of sexual misconduct by a former American cardinal. Meanwhile, thousands of Guatemalan citizens blocked off parts of a city to demand resignation of Guatemala president after the UN Anti-Graft Commission called for his impeachment. Well, again, to that breaking news is that President Uhuru Kenyatta has sent back to Parliament the finance bill, and that means that the MPs will have to rally 2/3 of the membership to overturn the president's directive. And of course, this also means he must have returned that finance bill with a memorandum, something we shall be following up on for you on NTV. So stay tuned. Sporting action is next. Stay with us.
Join the renowned University of Nairobi School of Business.
Let's have a look at the day's sports news. Welcome, my name is Brian Otwal. Berlin Marathon defending champion Gladys Cherono has set her eyes on the prize when she returns to the streets of Berlin this weekend. Cherono, who has been training in Eldoret, is optimistic that in addition to winning, she will lower her personal best time come Sunday. Lois Wangoi reports.
Gladys Cherono will be competing with former two-time world champion in marathon Edna Kiplagat, first rising Turunesh Dibaba, who is also the Chicago Marathon champion, as her main challengers. Dibaba, who is seen as a threat to the two Kenyan athletes, has won 3 gold medals consecutively in Olympic Games and 5 World Championships titles.
Hakuna mtu yeyote naona ni kama ni tisho kwangu tu, venye nimefanya mazoezi, nimetrain mzuri na mimi naenda kukimbia race yangu, sioni kama naogopa mtu yeyote.
The Eldoret best athlete won last year's edition in 2 hours, 20 minutes and 23 seconds ahead of Ethiopia's Ruti Aga, who crossed the line in 2:20:41, while another Kenyan, Valerie Ayabe, was in third place after clocking 2:20:53. She's currently training at the University of Eldoret.
Nilikuwa nafanya mazoezi yangu ya long runs kama 38 km speed walk. Unajua huwezi fanya long run peke yako, lazima uchanganye na speed walk. Sasa nilikuwa nafanya yote pamoja, naenda speed walk, naenda long runs. Sasa kila kitu ilikuwa sawa. Nilikuwa na balance. Yes.
The race will renew their rivalry with Dibaba, as they would always compete in the track events. In 2013, during the World Championships in Moscow, Cherono bagged a silver medal in the 1,000 meters behind Dibaba before shifting to road races, where she emerged a winner in the 2014 World Half Marathon in Copenhagen. In 2015, Cherono, in her debut Berlin Marathon, managed to run her personal best time of 2 hours, 19 minutes and 25 seconds. She didn't participate in any race in 2016 after picking a hamstring injury, causing her to cancel her participation in New York Marathon.
Lakini saa hii niko ready. Najua course niliwin 2015 na 2017 niliwin tena, so mimi ni defending champion na kila kitu iko sawa.
Her comeback saw her win the Berlin Marathon title in 2017, and she's looking forward to a repeat of the same in this year's Berlin Marathon edition. Lois Wangoi, NTV Sports, Eldoret.
And the defending champions for the men's and women's singles events will be absent at this year's Britam Kenya Open Tennis Championship that serves off on Saturday at the Nairobi club. Ugandan Duncan Mugbae and Natalie Coronel of Argentina, who clinched the respective titles at last year's finals, have not entered for this year's showpiece. By Thursday's deadline for entries, a record 73 men and 35 women had registered for Tennis Kenya's biggest calendar event. This year's championship has attracted players from Zimbabwe, Zambia, Rwanda, Uganda, Japan, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Burundi, Germany, Sudan, Ghana, as well as host Kenya. In the absence of defending champions, siblings Ishmael and Shufa Changawa of Kenya will be favorites to reclaim their men and women's crowns, having relinquished them last year. While Africa's other representatives at the World Championships in Cameroon, the national women's volleyball team has lined up 2 friendly matches against teams competition in the Kenya Volleyball Federation Men's League. The Malkia Strikers will play Kenya Prisons on Friday and Strathmore University on Saturday at the Kasarani Indoor Complex to help the technical bench gauge the players' strength and conditioning ahead of the FIVB World Championship in Japan. This afternoon saw the squad play KVF Women's League champions Kenya Pipeline, beating them in straight sets. Next week, Kenya will set up a 10-day camp in cities of Hitachi and Korubu in Japan to acclimatize and fine-tune ahead of the tournament. Kenya is in Pool D alongside Kazakhstan, Serbia, Puerto Rico, champions Brazil, and Dominican Republic. And Nation Media Group.